I don't think we ought to smash the technology. It's a wonderful, wonderful servant and a terrifying master.
You've decided that you're going to create your own school, and you've done it in a very different model. They're conditioning children from the day they were born at this point. It becomes an inherent part of how they view the world.
Yeah, I find
wild
and appalling. Their value is based on whether they got likes.
It's a crutch for parents. How do you combat that?
Technologically capable, but not culturally dependent.
We incorporated all this technology into our lives to simplify our lives, but yet somehow we're busier.
Technology has taken over, and it's the master, and the people are the slaves.
People are the slaves. So we have a daughter. So she is going to be 2 years old. Beautiful, best thing that ever happened to me. When I look at people when you have a child, all of a sudden the people in your immediate network happen to be parents with children that same age. That's just naturally how it works. And as I look around, most of the kids, even at that young age, are addicted to phones. All they do is look at their phones. Yeah. And then I look, well, what are they even looking at?
2-year-olds?
2-year-olds. 2-year-olds are addicted to their phones. And at that age, I'm like, what are you looking at? And I'm kind of peeking. Well, even the content that they're served, parents are like, well, it seems really innocent, seems really nice. It's so hard to find them good, conservative, strong Christian valued content. It doesn't exist out there because the ones that are available, they're so much better. They're snappier. Kids watch it longer. They put entire psychology and science behind making sure your kid watches for the maximum amount of time. They're conditioning children from the day they were born at this point. And if you start them at 1 or 2 years old, there's no way they're going to break free at 15, 16, 17, 18. It's way too gone. It becomes an inherent part of how they view the world.
Yeah.
How do you combat that?
Well, move to Moscow, Idaho.
The kids here aren't watching their phones at 2 years old.
Well, no.
Grandkids don't have iPads at 2?
No,
they'd be outliers.
my grandkids, for example, my son, I forget the exact age, but his kids don't have social media accounts. And so I just got an email from our Logos school is the school, our K through 12 school, and they are looking seriously at moderating, restricting phone use in high school, right? So you don't want, and what they're starting with is communicating with parents, giving school recommendations. I would say things like no social media accounts through high school. You can look at what your friends are posting, but not you can't post, because teenagers oftentimes their whole identity gets wrapped up in that, and their value is based on whether they got likes for the outfit or whatever. I think the best gift you could give to your kids is equipping them to be technologically capable, but not culturally dependent on their devices. And so I believe that sort of thing is going to have huge educational ramifications. The 2-year-olds on iPhones, I find wild and appalling.
But it's a crutch for parents.
Right.
A lot of stuff going on in life. Everyone's busy. People seem to get busier. I don't know why we incorporated all this technology into our lives to simplify our lives, but yet somehow we're busier.
Yeah.
We have all these things to make your life easier, but yet we seem to have less time.
Right.
In reality, we're losing our time to the doom scroll, but no one ever wants to count that. Right. But all these things that we said were supposed to make our life better. 2 years old, today, I'm just a little bit busy. I'm tired. I don't want to get mad at my kid. So, and she's acting up a little bit. Let's just today only. Yeah. It's only once.
Yeah.
And then next time you're like, well, okay, it's dinner. It's important. We're out. There's people watching. Fine. Just swear only one more time.
Yeah. No good.
Next time it's like, here, kid.
Yeah.
No,
I think that I think we're going to discover down the road that there are enormous neurological ramifications for how the brain works, how the brain forms from early phone use.
Isn't it almost exactly the same as we started this conversation as the previous boomer generation? it's their fault for the way that the people that are leading this generation now have become. And now that generation is using technology to raise their children, which is actually going further away. And we talk about how weak times creates hard times creates weak men, etc. There's no loop back then because we're using technology, and actually it's going to go even further down the road.
Right.
Do we separate? Do we turn it off? Because without it, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be broadcasting. We wouldn't be having this conversation. People wouldn't be listening.
I'm not a Luddite. I don't think we ought to smash the technology, but I think that it's a wonderful, wonderful servant and a terrifying master. And but it's wealth. Basically, think of it as the 2-year-old, that knows he's a rich kid, bossing around his nurse and his babysitter and throwing tantrums and stuff. That's the function of him not being trained to handle wealth. I don't have an objection to kids growing up in a home that's wired. I do have an objection where the technology is taken over and it's the master and the people are the slaves. That's the problem.
You have a pretty interesting way of running the schools here. It's a little bit different than how schools are run. And obviously, again, young daughter, we think about education all the time. Do we send them to a Christian school? Do we send her to public school? Do we send her to a more prestigious type of private school? Do we homeschool? And you've decided that you're going to create your own school, and you've did it in a very different model. Maybe you can explain that a little bit and why you chose that way.
Our schools are classical Christian schools. And I had read, when I was in the Navy, I had read an article by Dorothy Sayers called The Lost Tools of Learning, where she had an insight concerning the medieval trivium of grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. And she mapped that onto 3 stages of child development: the Paul Parrott stage, the Pert stage, and the poetic stage. And when we started our school, we just wanted a Christian school, and we didn't want a fancy prep school that was just basically like the government school, only
richer
and with a chapel. And we didn't want a fundamentalist reactionary academy either. And so we came up with the phrase classical and Christ-centered. Classical meant that it wasn't fundamentalist reactionary. Christ-centered meant it was going to be decidedly Christian. And I remembered that article that Dorothy Sayers had written. So we looked it up, and we didn't know what we were doing. So we thought, well, this is worth a try. And so we implemented it. And it had spectacular results. As soon as we started seeing the points go up on the scoreboard with how the kids were doing and how they flourish in that setting, we thought, oh, this is a good thing. We need to push it along. So Logos School has been going for since 1981, 40 plus years. And ACCS, the Association of Classical Christian Schools, has hundreds of schools around the country now that follow this model. And it's a great books program. It's a Western heritage program. It's decidedly Christian. And the kids are top drawer. They get a good education.
And you teach them Latin.
They start Latin in 3rd grade.
That is, I don't think anyone's doing that anymore these days. That's almost one of those things that they don't teach. Maybe a handful of schools will teach Latin, and then they'll tell, well, you should take Spanish or French. I don't know why anyone takes French, by the way. There's actually not a lot of value.
Unless you're going to West Africa.
But why Latin?
Latin, there are all sorts of reasons, but Latin is the foundation language for all the Romance languages. So just to take English is actually a Teutonic language, but with the genius of English is that it acquires vocabulary from other places. So 80% of English vocabulary, English has about 500,000 words in it. 80% of it is, 50% is Latin words, 30% Greek, and then the rest Anglo-Saxon and that sort of thing.
Made up words.
And in Romance languages, it's even a higher percentage. So if you were going to learn Spanish or Portuguese or Romanian or one of these Italian, Latin would be a good place to start. It's a great platform that enables you to go in any number of directions. And it really is a great blessing in English proficiency because if I say the Latin word dico means I speak or I tell, benediction, diction, dictionary, dictate, dictator, all comes from dico. So you learn one Latin word and there's 10 or 15 English words that fall out from that. So this is just the pragmatic answer. If you have a kid who takes a couple of years of Latin in school, that's good for 100 points on the English portion of the SAT.